Ben in Twickenham. Ben.
Yeah, good morning, Nick. Just a quick question. Well, not about the free schools. Not really just about free schools, but what is your plan with regards to ensuring qualified teachers?
Yeah.
Because, and I ask this because I've been here in the UK for 6 years now.
Yeah.
I started working in a college in central London, and I was employed not because of teaching qualifications. I was employed because of my background in research and industry. Yep. I was there for 5.5 years. I'm now working at an independent school in London. Again, not employed because I had teaching qualifications, employed because I was a good teacher of my background, what have you. And I say this because I've worked in these places and I see that qualified teachers that are very good, and I see qualified teachers that are not so good.
That's right.
So what are you proposing that's going to be different to ensure that all teachers are not qualified, not just qualified, but of quality?
Yeah, no, well, look, thanks for asking me this, Ben, because I feel really strongly about this, because I think it is a really good thing, and it's something I've been sort of promoting for years. Actually, before I went into politics, I even used to write sort of booklets about this, about the virtues of giving teachers and head teachers more freedom to run their schools. The days of the past. Well, you've only been here for a few years, Ben, but I'm not sure if you remember that under the previous Labour government, every single minute of a teacher's school day was micromanaged to the nth degree by ministers in Whitehall offices. And I'm really proud of the fact that what we've done in this government is actually set teachers and head teachers free. We've given, through the free school movement, parents' rights to, and indeed teachers, to set up schools if they want. And we've got 23,000 schools in our country. And if set aside the very small number of free schools for a moment, I actually want to see all of those 23,000 schools have more of those freedoms. Then the question becomes, and this is what I'm talking about in a speech later in the day, if you're giving teachers and head teachers more freedom, as we should, how do you then at the same time give parents the reassurance that regardless of what a school is called, because the schools are going to be increasingly called lots of different things and it can be quite confusing for parents, that nonetheless there's some basic core standards. So the core of knowledge, the slimmed down national curriculum, should be taught, in my view, in all schools. The standards on basically just producing a healthy, good quality food at lunchtime should apply to all schools. And I think, this comes to your point, in terms of teaching qualifications, I've got no problem at all with unqualified teachers seeking qualifications, so-called qualified teacher status, in the jargon QTS, while they're kind of learning on the job. I think it's perfectly okay. And of course, as you say, just because you've got qualified teacher status doesn't mean you're the greatest teacher ever, but it provides a certain basic quality standard. And that's also, by the way, in response to your point about how do you make sure that the best teachers are properly rewarded, what I support, the trade unions don't, but I do, the idea that head teachers should have more discretion at the margin of rewarding through pay those teachers who they think do best in the classroom. So that's the mix, if you like, of freedom, of rewarding good teaching, but also making sure there's some basic core standards that I'd like to see in our school system. Ben?
Yeah, agree. But the point I guess I'm trying to make is that the current teacher training system doesn't work.
Right.
It is not the fact that somebody has a PGCE that makes them a good teacher.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
There are so many other factors: how you engage with the students, how you interact, do you inspire them, all those sorts of things, which cannot be taught.
No.
And I've seen so many people come into the classroom, I've got a PGCE, I've got QTS, I've got this, and they just cannot deliver an effective lesson.
No, but Ben, can I just interrupt? Of course you're right, but that's the same with all qualifications. Just because someone's got an accountancy degree doesn't mean they're going to be the greatest accountant. They might not be that good. Just because someone's got a law degree doesn't mean they're going to necessarily be a brilliant barrister. But that's what we do in all professions, is we say that there are some basic qualifications, but then of course people distinguish each other through inspiration, through force of personality, through character, through innovation. And all I'm saying is let's get the right, in as much as what the government can do, is get the right mix between innovation and freedom in the classroom with some basic standards which reassure parents that regardless of whether their sons and daughters go, those core standards, that's what I'm saying, which I think is a sensible approach as we go forward and give all schools, not just free schools and academies, all schools more freedoms.
Final point to you, Ben. Go on, final point, Ben.
So just how do we do this? How do we ensure this? Because it's about, obviously, like you say, getting the right people into the classroom.
Yeah.
Sure, well, and then train them, because you can train. How
I'll tell you one thing that we can do, Ben, all of us, is take every opportunity to pay tribute to how what a wonderful, noble vocation teaching is. I can't think of almost anything else which is more important in society than having great, well-motivated teachers, because they have the future of our children in their hands. And I think there's huge pride attached to teaching. The vast majority of teachers I meet just work extraordinarily hard for the kids they care for. All I'm saying is that, let's make sure that parents know that as schools, as I say, become more autonomous, they've got some basic standards.
Ben, thank you. This was described, of course, at the weekend, Deputy Prime Minister, as a great coalition crisis, the fact that you weren't supporting certain aspects of the free schools.
Of course it isn't. No, look, I'm perfectly entitled to talk without being sort of shouted down about my vision, if you like, of what the future of our school system should be. And
why does a teacher need a piece of paper?
Teacher, look, having a piece of paper doesn't in and of itself, as Ben has just rightly said you're going to be the greatest teacher ever.
But you want them to have this piece of paper.
No, what I want is parents to know that there's some basic quality standards for the teachers in the classrooms where their children are taught.
But if we look at the education that you enjoyed, and I had a private school education, and my sons went to private school, so I'm not scoring a point over there, but you were taught by people who didn't have these qualifications.
If you pay your fees, you take your chances.
Jim Cogan, your English. Do you remember Mr. Cogan?
I do. Sadly died some years ago.
Former Royal Marine. He didn't have this relevant piece, but I understand you were very close to him, and he was a very powerful gentleman called David Cook. I don't know if you remember Mr. Cook. Mr. Cook was studied history. He was at Westminster. He was in charge of tuition into Oxford and Cambridge. He didn't have the piece of it. Theo Zinn, who was a classics teacher. Do you remember Mr. Zinn at your school?
Yes, I
remember Mr. Zinn, a fantastic classics teacher who often would ignore the books on the A-level curriculum if they were ones he thought were better for the pupils. Why do we need these?
Because it's a very common sense thing. If you pay
that school, which is a great school.
Sorry, Nick. I really feel very strongly about this. The idea that in the school system for which government is responsible, supported by all taxpayers, which is far, far bigger than the smaller number of schools where parents, if you like, pay the fees and take their chances, that we don't have a duty of care towards parents and children. There's some basic standards. I cannot for the life of me understand when free schools, which has been the controversy at the moment, actually a tiny little number of schools in the total system, but if I can just give you an example, free schools at the moment are under an obligation to employ qualified teachers where they teach children with special education needs. Free schools at the moment are under an obligation, under a rule. So they don't operate in anarchy without any rules. They're under an obligation to respect a rule. They have to provide a balanced curriculum. I'm saying let's build on that. Let's improve that situation by making sure that those basic standards of what you're taught, who you're taught by, the quality of the food that our children eat at lunchtime is of a basic standard. I'm amazed at anyone thinking that it is a controversial statement to say that across 23,000 state-funded schools we should have some basic quality standards which provide a guarantee, if you like, a reassurance to parents in the years to come.
More on this from, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister later today. You're making a speech at, I think, is it a North London school?
Yes, a school in London. But one of the things I'm announcing, by the way, which is a government announcement, which is something which we're going to do now, which is not sort of peering into the future, but we're going to start from next September, is a great new thing. It's a kind of, how can I put it, it's like a sort of Champions League of head teachers, where schools that are failing and really desperately need a kind of lift through inspired leadership, we will match them with inspired, outstanding head teachers or deputy heads, help those heads and deputy heads to relocate themselves and their families to those schools so that they can give that motivational lead and help lift those schools.
Who will decree who's in the Champions League? Is it league tables?
Well, we're going to be the Department for Education will announce some of the details of exactly the sort of hoops you have to jump through. Right. And it'll start small next. If we can get 20 schools involved next September, that's a good start.
But will it be pupils' attainment that decrees I'm a superhead, or how will I be deemed to be?
Oh, there's lots of, there's Ofsted reports and so on. There's lots of different ways in which you judge. But one thing which is absolutely clear, and I sort of intuitively kind of sense this as a dad with 3 kids at school, is that leadership in schools is a very, very big factor in determining whether schools give a good education or not.